presence. The disciple is never separated from the spiritual master. But still, that sentiment is naturally there. And we hear it materially also sometimes. Devotees just miss being with their beloved or their parents at that moment when they leave their body and they feel lament or lament. His natural devotee will feel lamentation, perhaps perplexity, perhaps, you feel somewhat weakened, disheartened, or whatever it may be, different emotions will come. And similarly, when Prabhupada unmanifested his pastimes to our vision, different devotees will have had different effects in their heart. Some of them are more, you could say, pervasive, some of them are specific. Particularly those devotees had a very close association with Srila Prabhupada's Vapu. The effect of his Vapu no longer being accessible was, in many cases, was very extremely difficult to bear. But many of us who didn't have so much association with the Vapu, physical form, the Vani had been, not to say those who had Vapu didn't have the Vani, they surely did. But the Vani was, basically speaking, the predominant factor in the relationship. And in many cases, I can only speak for myself, in London, no doubt we had quite a lot of Srila Prabhupada's presence in London, where I was at that time based. But at the same time, we had been, from the day I joined at least, we had been more or less focused on the Vani. And of course, everyone was, Vapu or Vani. In the presence of the spiritual master, we served the physical form of the spiritual master. In their absence, we serve the Vani. That doesn't mean we don't serve the Vani in their presence. We do that too. So the attachment and the realization of the living force of the spiritual master. The living force of the spiritual master is the instruction. The Vani is considered. They're both absolutely important, you can say. But the Vani is the living force. The Vani is the important factor which carries us on our journey back to Godhead. Our faith in the spiritual master's instruction, as Prabhupada himself said, is our life and soul. It's our life and soul. We're followers of Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami is the Acharya of Abhideya, the path of leading to prayojan, leading to the objective goal. The spiritual master initiates us into that process. But Rupa Goswami, as we're endeavoring to become Rupa Nugas, following in his footsteps through the parampara, disciplic succession, it's by following these instructions that we can really satisfy the spiritual master, whether they're physically, so to speak, present, or they're not. Physically absent, either in locale or the fact that they have departed this world. Their instructions remain. They leave the boat instead that they come to take us across the great ocean of birth and death, Tamasimam Jyotirgamaha, to take us out of the darkness into the light. So whether they're physically present or not, the principle is the same. I'll give you a brief example. When Srila Prabhupada came to London in 1977, and at least physically speaking, we were there, we imbibed this principle that you please the spiritual master through his instruction, through worshipping his instruction. At that time, in 1977, because from around about March onwards, at least April, Srila Prabhupada's health was visibly declining. And throughout the whole of our ISKCON movement, practically speaking, which was mostly, those days, was mostly focused on the Western Hemisphere. India was there, but there were very few Indian devotees, comparatively speaking. We can see how the dynamics, the demographics have changed radically over the last 47 years of ISKCON's growth. But in 1977, predominantly speaking, the devotees were from what we call the Western Hemisphere or something like that. There were some African devotees, but very few. There were lots of South American devotees, North American devotees, European devotees, Australian, New Zealand devotees, and a few here and there in other countries, but very, very minimal, comparatively speaking. Most of the temples were in America, Europe, South America, Australia, like that. There were temples in India, but not like now where there are literally hundreds and hundreds of ISKCON temples. Just a handful of temples, basically, mostly manned by Westerners. So when we heard news that Srila Prabhupada was health was declining all over ISKCON world, we embarked with the inspiration of the leadership of our movement and Srila Prabhupada, knowing how much Srila Prabhupada was concerned with spreading Krishna consciousness. That shouldn't be at the expense of our own active practicing of Krishna consciousness, of course. But externally, the missionary spirit was focused predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly on book distribution. So there was an extreme mood, and not just a mood, but a practical execution of that mood. This was Srila Prabhupada's mission in one sense. You try to imbibe the mood of the spiritual master, and then one actively tries to find out how to execute the will of the spiritual master from one's own position as best as we can. We try to become instruments of his will. So all devotees, practically speaking, who were active within ISKCON at that time, made it their main focus to assist in, actively participate in the mission of distributing Prabhupada's books. And virtually everywhere, particularly here in America and in Europe, and we can say everywhere really. In England, we very much did so, and in France and in Germany and other European temples, to distribute Prabhupada's books more than ever before. Normally it was going on, but mostly the emphasis was in the Prabhupada Book Marathon, which is coming up very soon in December, when we made an extra endeavor to focus wholly and solely on book distribution. Everything else was put on hold until after the marathon was over. Because our intention was to realize that Prabhupada was very, very, very pleased. And he said many times, I live forever in my books, and so on and so forth. So those were very much wanting to keep Srila Prabhupada here. Prabhupada said, I'll live forever through my books. And this was bringing him great life, giving him tremendous energy. In fact, when Prabhupada came to England in August 77, late August and early September, he spent approximately 2 weeks in London at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And we, the little devotees like ourselves, we were like, all we can say, we were just the doers with a little instrument. We weren't one of the big devotees in the inner circle. Prabhupada, consider everyone equal. But from our relative point of view, some devotees were in the inner circle, and most of us were just busy engaging whatever service was needed. So our service at that time was varied, but primarily Srila Prabhupada was present. So first and foremost, to look after his comforts, do what we can to make his life there in Bhaktivedanta manner as comfortable as possible, though not very competent, but as much as possible. And from the practical point of view, besides that, was to distribute books. Devotees had come from all over Europe, so there was an extra wave of devotees. But the local devotees, we tried to increase the book. In fact, during that 2 weeks he was there, day after day, we tried to increase the book distribution. We were not hanging around waiting to see if, Srila Prabhupada would, say something or come out of his room, which he rarely did. Of course, his health was very, very, very weak. He could not walk. We carrying him on a palanquin, and he rarely came down to the temple. We'll tell more about that later. But the primary thing we're talking about here is the instruction of the spiritual master. So Prabhupada was extremely pleased when he heard that book distribution was increasing during his presence. So we took that as a cue. We took that as a will, Prabhupada. That's how we always kept him with us. That's how we always felt his presence in our heart, by taking his instruction as our life and soul. And even after Prabhupada's departure, no doubt, what was our reaction? So a couple of months later, not even that, 2 months later, 2 months after Prabhupada left London, more or less, he left the world. So what was our reaction then? Our reaction varied, as we mentioned, from individual to individual. And I was never, strangely enough, I'm kind of an emotional, sentimental person, you could say. But strangely enough, I didn't feel the same, perhaps as much emotionally speaking as others. It may be an indication of my lack of love, my lack of devotion to Srila Prabhupada. Probably is. But nonetheless, it increased my desire to serve his mission. It didn't have a feeling of, that's it, now finished. Enough. Now what's going to happen? Of course, everyone asked that question, as anyone naturally would. Even we've had you could say the heartbreaking effect this year, for instance, of the departure of Srila Gopal Krishna Mahraj, which major general in Prabhupada's mission. For everyone, no matter who we are, we bow down eternally to his lotus feet for the service he's rendered. So what do? Do we just fight? Do we just give up? Do we just try to take over? What are we supposed to do? Well, let's see what we're supposed to do. And it was nice because there was a nice factor to it. We delved deeply into Srila Prabhupada's books because we realized Prabhupada's will is in his books. His will is not just a piece of paper that tells who owns the property and this and that, and who are the leading managers of ISKCON. But his real will is in his books. So we dived into his books to see, what are we supposed to do? What does this mean? Many of us regret, of course we were not in a position necessarily to do so, regret not perhaps clarifying issues sufficiently regarding the guru situation, the leadership situation, and so on and so forth, particularly the guru situation. Many regret that. But what to do is, what's done is done. Krishna ultimately is the super soul, guiding the wanderings of everyone. So there was another reason behind this. And one of the aspects was, it is not to be lazy and just think, oh, we just hear the spiritual master's instruction and like a machine, follow those instructions. Prabhupada wanted us to realize and love and imbibe those instructions in our heart in a way which was not just a machine, a mechanical way, but in a way was our life and soul. So we made this, I suppose, generally speaking, this was a very pervasive response amongst other emotional or concerned responses of Prabhupada's departure. But I remember when we received the news of Prabhupada's departure, it was very early in the morning of the 15th of November, because let's see, were they ahead of us? Well, maybe not. No, they're ahead of us in India. So I think it was still the 14th of November, and it would have been 7:25. Yeah, it was in the evening of the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, we stayed up. That's right. We got the news. I came downstairs. I was one of the kind of responsible persons at the manor. And our temple president, the Chittavira Prabhu, called us downstairs, several of us, to his office and revealed the news of Srila Prabhupada's departure, which had quickly emanated from, we didn't have the same social media as we do now, but phone calls, telegrams, things like that. Maybe some telex messages were sent. I don't know how it came, but it quickly came. And that evening we heard the news, and all that was we decided we would stay up all night in front of Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasana with kirtan. And naturally the devotees were very emotional, it's understood. And all night chanting the next morning, very difficult, we couldn't sleep. It's another thing about it's kind of samadhi, absorption, maybe in a different way, but absorption in the spiritual master, which is really absorption in Krishna. He's carrying Krishna in his heart. And wherever he goes, he speaks about Krishna. And, devotees or his lotus feet, they're just constantly remembering Srila Prabhupada and just almost afraid to think what's happening next. So we read from the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We don't have much time, but I'm going to read one verse from the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's not much time here to go very deep into this, but we'll just read it. So this, if you have your mobile or your books or whatever you have there in your homes this morning, this is from the fourth canto. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Just chanting that simple little mantra reminds us of Prabhupada and how he would chant it practically every day, wherever he gave class. Om Namo, he may not have chanted, we'd have put them there, someone chant it, and then he repeat, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reminds us of Srila Prabhupada. And that's really amazing how when we see the deities installed by Prabhupada, when we read his books, when we do the things he did during his presence or the places he went, just like New York, it's so fortunate we can remember Srila Prabhupada. But what it should do is spark the dedication now to follow his instructions. So I'm going to read one verse and about part of the purport from the fourth canto, 28th chapter, text 51. 4:28:51, if you want to follow. And, this is an amazing interaction between Narada Muni and King Prachini Barhishat. The whole section is so relevant to this aspect of the teachings of the spiritual master. He teaches us how to die. He teaches us through this how to live so that we're prepared to die. He teaches us the mood when this happens. He teaches everything. What is the goal of life? Everything about Prabhupada's departure was a transcendental lesson to learn and to remember and to work towards. My dear king, Narada Muni says, one Brahmin who was an old friend of King Paranjan came to that place and began to pacify the queen with sweet words. The queen, by Darby, her husband, King Malayadvaj, had left the world. Her husband had left the world. They were vanaprasthas. They'd given up their kingdom, so to speak. And the king, in due course of time, due to austerity and old age, left the world, and she was very distraught. So let's read Srila Prabhupada's purport. She was crying and crying, holding on to his feet. Prabhupada writes, the appearance of an old friend in the form of a Brahmin is very significant. In his Paramatma feature, Krishna is the old friend of everyone. You'll find in this short purport many questions which we ask are answered. According to Vedic injunction, Krishna is sitting with a living entity side by side. According to the Shruti mantra, Dva Supana Soyuja Sakaya. These mantras spoken, the Vedic mantras. Huh? The Lord is sitting within the heart of every living entity as Surit, the best friend. The Lord is always eager to have the living entity come home, back to Godhead. Sitting with the living entity as witness, the Lord gives him all chances to enjoy himself materially. But whenever there is an opportunity, the Lord gives good counsel and advises the living entity to abandon trying to become happy through material adjustment and instead turn his face toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrender unto him. Now, this is the Super Soul. He is Chaitya Guru in the heart. The external manifestation of the Super Soul, Diksha, Siksha, whatever it may be, Guru, has departed. So Chaitya Guru, from whom the spiritual master is the manifestation of anyway, is now take opportunity guiding the disciple. When one becomes serious to follow the mission of the spiritual master, his resolution is tantamount to seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As explained before, this means meeting the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the instruction of the spiritual master. They cannot be separated in one sense. This is technically called Vani Seva. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states in his Bhagavad Gita commentary on the verse beginning, Vyavasa Yatmika Buddhir Ekehu Kuranandana, that one should serve the words of the spiritual master. The disciple must stick to whatever the spiritual master orders, simply by following on that line. One sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We could say the purpose of Srila Prabhupada's movement is that we go back to Godhead. It's not just that we stay here and serve, but by dedicating ourselves to that, one attains that goal. This is the methodology. Prabhupada then continues, which I'll read a bit more. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, appeared before the Queen as a Brahmin. But why did not he appear in his original form as Sri Krishna? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that unless one is very highly elevated in loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot see him as he is. Nonetheless, if one sticks to the principles enunciated by the spiritual master, somehow or another, he is in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Lord is in the heart, he can advise the sincere disciple from within. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. In conclusion, if a disciple is very serious to execute the mission of the spiritual master, he immediately associates with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by Vani or Vapu. This is the only secret of success in seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Instead of being eager to see the Lord in some bush of Vrindavan, while at the same time engaging in sense gratification, if one instead sticks to the principle of following the words of the spiritual master, he will see the Supreme Lord without difficulty. Srila Bill, I'm going to finish the commentary on that verse at that point. The point is that we're taking direction from the Lord. The Lord in the heart is giving us direction. And how do we take that? We try to take the instructions which we've received in various ways. Prabhupada was so, if we look carefully, how much he emphasized, you will know me by reading my books. I am present. I have my ecstasies in my books. If you, so many times, these books, one time Prabhupada was, I can't remember the whole thing. I was looking for my quote on it, but he was with Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Bhagavat Prabhu one time, and he was explaining, you're not reading my books. You're not reading them. You're not going there. He said, even I read my books. He probably said, I read my books. He said, sometimes we hear they're not his books, which many times the voice. We would say Srila Prabhupada's books, but Prabhupada would say they're Krishna's books. He said, when I sit down to write these books, he said, Krishna sits right next to me and tells me what to do, what to write. Prabhupada said that in that conversation with Tamal and Bhagavat Prabhu. So, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. So, it's not that Prabhupada, it's Krishna speaking through Prabhupada. And he's reminding us of that. It's our life and soul. The instruction of Srila Prabhupada is the boat which he has left behind to carry us. So even if we never had that association with Prabhupada, the principle is still exactly the same. To take the spiritual master's instructions. You can hear them in many ways, but the books especially are really solid. We hear memories of devotees, and they are very wonderful and enlivening, but they're not always absolute. They may be absolute to the devotee, but sometimes they're mixed. I've noticed this, listening to many of the memories. My memories are the same, that they're not necessarily completely correct. They're not wrong either, but they sometimes give a wrong impression. Somebody who's perhaps got some agenda, especially, sometimes gives a wrong impression. Whole doctrines of philosophy have been developed in ISKCON over this. And, we've got to be careful to really surrender to Srila Prabhupada's words, his instructions in the book, and execute them. It is the disciple's duty to execute. But we'll talk more about that this evening because it's now 6, 7 o'clock or whatever it is. And it's time to get on with this glorious day of glorifying Srila Prabhupada, not just lamenting, but glorifying him on this occasion of giving to the entire universe this opportunity to go back to Godhead. No one else has gone out and done this. There's no time to go into it, but this is a fact. No one else has done it. And he's still doing it through his books, through the sincere follower. This movement will spread more and more. Everyone can be a part of this spread. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. So I will finish there and thank you all for your association this morning. And we wish you all a glorious day. And whenever you get the chance, try to tune in to Srila Prabhupada's instructions today and get his association. And you will be inspired. You'll be inspired more and more to go forward in Krishna consciousness, spread this movement. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. You can read that section. That's just one verse. I would read more if we had time. There's some very specific purports there, giving specific direction what to do.
Maharaj, what was the verse?
Yeah. Well, the one I read today is only one of a series. It's the 4th canto, chapter 28, from about verse 48 onwards. I read 51, but other verses they're deep meditations, which we should keep with us on this day as well. There are many other places we could read about Bhishma, his departure, and so on, or meditate on the mood of Srila, which we should have to please Srila Prabhupada. And that's all this movement's for. It's basically just to enact his mood and mission. It's not so common. We don't have to make up our own mood and mission. That will not work. We just have to imbibe the mood of the pure devotees and try to, according to our own little parts and parcels that we are, but our own little capacity, whatever Krishna's given us, and try to put that into our life, into our daily lives, at moment by moment. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol. We'll see some of you this evening if Krishna wills. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Haribol.
Hari. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Today is fasting till noon, and we'll have a program in the evening starting sharp at 7 p.m., 7 to 9. Please all join to increase our meditation of Srila Prabhupada, and we can glorify. Devotees can even make some items in their home and bring it for Srila Prabhupada. Okay, we like to offer our praise to the Supreme Lord by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Rama Hare Rama,
Rama
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Ram,
Rama
Ram
Rama, Hare
Ram,
Hare.
Hare Hare.
Let's offer our humble obeisances to all the
All the
listeners.
Vaishnavas,
Vancha
Vancha
Kalpatarubhasya
Kalpatarubhasya,
Kripa
Kripa Sindhubheva
Sindhubhyevacha
Patitanam
Patitanam Pavanebhyo
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
Namo
Namo
Namaha.
Namaha.
Ki Jai.
Jai,
Prabhupada
Father Ki Jai.
Jai,
Okay.
Hari
Hare Krishna.
Radhe.
Hare Krishna.